Hi everyone, it's Miss Akbari in the library. I wanted to tell you about the book Loving versus Virginia. This is a book that we have in the historical fiction section of our library. This book is based off an actual Supreme Court case that happened in the 1960s, where Mildred and Richard Loving um, sued the state of Virginia to be allowed to legally marry. Um, Back in the 50s, when Richard and Mildred met, um, people of different races were not allowed to marry in some states, and that's the situation that Richard and Mildred found themselves in. So when this book starts, it starts with Mildred and Richard when they are in school. They grew up in the same neighborhood. They had friends in common. They would go to different events and both be at the same events, but they went to different schools. And the reason for that is in the South, and Virginia was part of that Southern group of states. In the 1940s and 1950s, um, schools were under Jim Crow laws, just like restaurants and other things where the law was required to be separate but equal. So white people were allowed to go to school, black people were allowed to go to school, but they weren't allowed to go together. And so that what you can see on the screen here is a picture of what it looks like if you were white and went to school versus if you were black and went to school. And you can see that while it definitely is separate, it also is not equal. If there was not much funding that went to schools for African Americans, you can see they don't have desks. They don't have the nice blackboards and charts on the wall. There aren't a lot of textbooks to go around. So it definitely wasn't an equal situation. And in fact, when you read about Mildred's part of the story, she was really frustrated by that. She was really excited to be able to go to school. And so it was hard for her when she didn't have the supplies that she needed. So, like I said before, Mildred and Richard knew each other from when they were kids. As they got older, they spent more time together, started dating, they fell in love, and wanted to get married. What Mildred didn't know, but Richard was pretty sure, is that they weren't legally allowed to be married because they were of different races. And this map shows you. In which states that was against the law. So if the state on the map is shaded blue, that means that it was illegal for a black person and a white person to marry in 1958, which is weird to think of now, but that's how things were in the United States before the civil rights movement of the late 50s and early 60s. In fact, those separate schools that I showed you a picture of, that started to change around this time as well. So Little Rock, Arkansas was a place where they were starting to integrate the schools, so allow both races to attend the same school at the same time. The state of Virginia actually closed their schools rather than integrate their schools. That's how strongly they felt about it. And so when Richard and Mildred got married in 1958, they got married in the spring. They got arrested just 6 weeks later. They had to go to court, and the courts decided that they could not live in the state of Virginia and see their marriage be legal. So they spent years fighting it. They spent 6 years fighting it, driving back and forth from Washington, D.C., where it was legal for them to be married, to occasionally visit their family in Virginia. It was really difficult. It was very expensive for them to live that way. And they finally got a lawyer in 1964 through the ACLU, and they started to bring a lawsuit to say that this was unconstitutional. There was no reason that they shouldn't be allowed to be married. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And finally, in 1967, they won their court case. So, if you're interested in the civil rights era of history, if you find it hard to believe that people could be in this situation as recent ago as 50 or 60 years ago, um, the book Loving versus Virginia might be a good fit for you. It's also a book that's written mostly in verse, so it's a pretty fast read. There's not a ton of text on the page, and there are some really great illustrations as well as the historical photographs. So I learned a lot reading this book, and I hope you also enjoy reading Loving versus Virginia.